In this section, we're going to look at a particular type of question, which is to reverse a percentage change. What we're looking to do in these questions is basically undo a percentage change that's already taken place. Now, to do this, we need to remember that if we want to increase something by a percentage of 5%, we use our multiplier, so we multiply by 1.05. Now, if that's already taken place, and we then have 105%, we know what this new amount is. If I want to go back to the original amount, I've just got to do the opposite of multiplying by 1.05. So to reverse a percentage change, I just divide by 1.05. So let's look at this first example. When you're doing these examples, recognizing them as part of the problem. And to do that, I need to pay particular attention to the timeline. So a collector's card has increased in value over the last year by 6%. It's now worth £344.50. How much was it worth a year ago? So this is the amount today, and what we're looking for is what the amount was a year ago, so in the past. It's already increased by 6%. Now, a good way to think about this is that if we have an original value and it's been increased by 6% to give it a new value of £344.50, how would I have changed this original value into the new value? So this value here has increased in value by 6%. So to change that original value to the new value, we would have needed to multiply by 1.06. That's our multiplier to increase something by 6%. That's not what we are doing here though. We're trying to reverse that change. So this percentage change has already taken place, taking the original value of the card and multiplying it by 1.06 to get the new value that's mentioned in our question. We want to do the opposite of this to go from our new value back to our original value. Now, that just means doing the opposite of what's up here. Multiplication by 1.06, well, the opposite to that is going in the other direction. We need to divide by 1.06. So let's now have a look at how we would write this out. So we're going to take our £344, remember, which is our new value after the percentage change has already taken place, and we're going to reverse that. So we would have multiplied by 1.06 to change it to 344.50. So to change it back again to the previous value, we're going to do the opposite, divide by 1.06. On my calculator, that gives me £325. Now, a really common mistake that people make with this sort of question is they think they can find 6% of this amount and just subtract it. But remember, the 6% isn't 6% of this amount, it's 6% of this unknown amount. So we can't do that. So we'll now look at the next example. The value of a car has decreased by 22% since it was bought. If it's now worth £28,080, what was the original purchase price? So again, you've got to think about this on a timeline. At the moment, it's worth £28,080, but that's after somebody has decreased it by 22%. So we've got to ask ourselves, what would they needed to have done to decrease it by 22%? So let's look at this diagram down at the side here. So we have an original price, which we don't know, but what happened to that original price is somebody decreased it by 22% to give us this price. So how would you decrease something by 22%? Well, if you take 22% away from 100%, you're left with 78%, and we know the multiplier for that is 0.78. So somebody had to take that original price and multiply it by 0.78 to decrease the value by 22%. In other words, multiply that. So we need to undo that change. So to undo a multiplication by 0.78, we simply do the opposite of multiplication by 0.78. So we're going to divide by 0.78. So in the question, all I'd be writing for this one is taking my £28,080 and dividing it by 0.78, typing that into my calculator, and I end up with £36,000. We're now going to look at a second way to do the same sort of question, but this method will be a bit more useful if it comes up in a non-calculator paper, and this method basically uses proportion. So, for example, a train ticket with 60% off costs £24. So that's a percentage change that's already taken place. In other words, there was a full price ticket and someone has taken 60% off, and what's left is £24. And it's saying, what was the full price of the ticket before that reduction? Now, we know that if we take 60% off of something, That's 100%, take away 60%, we're left with 40%. So this £24 here represents 40% of the full price ticket. So I can write that out like this. 40%, and we're using proportions, we'll just use an arrow here, is £24. What I've got to do with proportion is I've got to try and, by dividing both sides of this and multiplying both sides of this, get that back to what 100% was. Now, if I had a calculator, a quick way to do this would be divide both sides by 40 to find out what 1% was worth in money, and then multiply both sides by 100. Now, I want to avoid doing that because, as I said, this is probably going to be in a non-calculator question, so I need to work with numbers that are easy here to work with. So I might look at this value here, 40%, and say, well, I can quite easily get that down to 10%, and 10 easily goes in to 100. So how would I do that? Well, I'm going to start off by saying, well, if I divide this side by 4, which means I need to divide the other side by 4 as well. Remember, if things are directly proportional, we need to do the same thing to both sides. So 10%, 40% divided by 4 is 10%, and over here, £24 divided by 4 is £6. That means 10% of the ticket is worth £6. But I'm interested in what the original value was, so I'm interested in what 100% is. So to get 10% to become 100%, I need to multiply it by 10. That gives me 100%. And if I multiply this side by 10, I also need to multiply this side by 10 over here. So 100% would be £60. So this is the original price of the ticket before the 60% was taken off. The important thing in these questions, when you get this percentage up here, is choosing to divide by a number which will give you something here which can be multiplied easily to make 100.